Hello and welcome to the Microsoft 365 Business Voice webinar. I'm your host, Stephen Bourne, Network Administrator and Teams Advocate here at Bridgehead IT. Just wanted to go over a few things before we get started. I know we had an hour scheduled this morning, but just wanted to make sure we left adequate room and time for questions. So just so you guys are aware. And then secondly, just wanted to make sure that you do submit your questions to the Q&A section of the Teams live event. We will be addressing those at the end of the webinar. So I wanted to just start off with a short video. This kind of goes through the entire all the services that Teams offers, and will give you a much better understanding if you're not familiar with Teams about all of the different things that you can accomplish within Microsoft Teams. And if you are familiar with Teams, it might brush you up on some of the functions that make Teams such a great business hub. So we'll start that video, and we'll see you guys right after that.
Hi there. Welcome to Microsoft Teams, a collaboration app that helps your team stay organized and have conversations all in one place. Let's start with, what else? Teams. Here, you can see a list of all the teams you're part of. Teams are made up of channels. You can build them by topic, department, or just for fun. Channels are where the real work gets done, where you hold meetings, have team conversations, and share files. At the top of each channel, you'll find tabs. They're like links to your favorite files, apps, and services. Want to have a quick on-the-spot meeting with people in your channel? Select Meet Now. In a meeting, you can show content from your computer or record your meeting. When you share a file in a channel conversation, you and your team can edit it at the same time and share thoughts alongside it. To find all the files that have been shared in a channel, go to the Files tab at the top of the channel. To see all the files ever shared across the team, click Files on the left. Want to talk privately with a person or group? Click New Chat at the top and type their names. Give the chat a name to make it easier to find later. To make a call directly from a chat, click Video Call or Audio Call. In some cases, if your organization has set it up, you can call anyone from Teams using calls, even if they're not using Teams. In meetings, you can see everything you've got lined up for the day or week. Or schedule a meeting. This calendar syncs with your Outlook calendar. Go to Activity for a view that lets you catch up on all your unread messages, @mentions, replies, and more. And use the command box to search for specific items or people, take quick actions, and launch apps. Convenient, right? And don't forget to download the mobile app so you're in sync when you're on the go. Thanks for watching. Now bring in your team and let the collaboration begin.
So that's one of the coolest things about Teams is it has pretty much everything you could want in terms of collaboration tool. It's a unified communications, the best unified communications example that we know of. And you have messaging, you have group collaboration, you have meetings, you have files, and then you also have voice. So we've had a lot of actually customer success stories implementing Microsoft 365 Business Voice, also known as Teams Voice. And I just wanted to share a quick story about someone who had a pretty old phone system. There'll be some pictures coming up, and you can see on the left the switchboard that was used at the front desk. It had about 100 extensions on it. And in the second picture, you can see all of the 66 blocks, all of the legacy phone equipment. This was what they were used to, and it was static, it was ancient, it was not agile. And so one thing that we noticed right when we put Teams in is people were able to really change the way that they use the phone system. We had, like you saw in the video, people are now able to leverage their cell phones, but use their business line. They're not having to give out their cell phone numbers anymore. They can use Teams across multiple devices. They're able to implement very sophisticated call routing so that they can route to different departments through for service and have those calls, if not answered, go to a different department to make sure that these calls are answered, and do this all from a variety of platforms like we talked about. So in the Teams environment, you have the different pieces of hardware like I talked about, and I wanted to kind of go over those a little bit. So you have your certified Teams phones, which would be Polycom, Yealink, Audio Codes, and there's a couple other vendors that provide really high quality desk phones. What we've seen people go towards is actually using their computer as a soft phone and using just a simple headset. It's one of those things where it takes people a little bit of time to go away from the desk phone that they've been used to for so long and to move to the desktop with a headset. But over time, we've seen that absolutely almost everyone goes to the desktop with the headset. It's something that is just very easy to already be in Teams, escalate messages to calls, call outbound while you're already in Teams doing something. It's just a very quick and easy way to make a phone call and also receive phone calls. And then you also have conferencing devices. So there's Polycom Trios, Yealink conference series as well that can be set up with business voice capability. And you can use those in your conference rooms to join audio bridges or to make outbound calls and have a group of people ready to leverage Teams voice to participate in a call. So one thing I also wanted to show you guys is the administrative side of Teams. This is something that I think will get you a better idea of what Teams has to offer in terms of replacing your phone system. Because what we've talked about so far is kind of the end user experience. I think it's important that you see what's going on the back end so that you have a better idea of how to leverage this fully for your company. So in the Teams Admin Center, this is where you can go and build out all of the different things that you want, all of the different policies that are going to make sure your phone system is exactly how you want it. Maybe a mirror image of what you currently have, or it could be something a little bit different and you just leverage Teams for that. So the first thing that I think, obviously all the phones that you sign in with, all the conference phones, all the handsets, they're all going to register back to the Teams Admin Center. And one of the great things about that is it allows you to do things like view firmware version history. You can actually update the firmware directly from the portal. You can pull logs if you need any diagnostics, and you can also just restart the device if it needs it. So let's say, for instance, if I go to Blake's phone, so you have your options right there in front of you. You can download logs like we talked about, update software, restart. It allows a lot of ease of management. So you're not having to actually log into the device necessarily. You can action it from the Teams Admin Center. One of the coolest things that I like about this is you can actually, in the firmware, if I go to see available updates, I can actually schedule that firmware update. So I have the option first of deferring my firmware update, but in the updates, I can go ahead and schedule that. So I can select a number of phones, and I can go ahead and schedule that at any date, any time, the component that I want to update. And from there, I can make sure that those go off without me even having to think about it after I press OK. So from the numbers side, one of the things I think that Teams really has a supreme advantage over other systems is the ability to acquire numbers quickly. That's something that when you're working with a regular carrier, you're typically waiting a little bit. You're having to go through kind of a bureaucratic process to get numbers and assign them to your account and go through all of that mess. Well, this is extremely simple, and it provisions in minutes. So you have first your emergency addresses, which are basically setting your locations in the company to which you'll assign different numbers. So I start with building out my emergency addresses and then acquiring phone numbers. And I'll kind of go through this process just so you can see how easy it really is. So if I go to add numbers here, I'm going to select what country or region. And as you can see here, Teams does support multinational organizations. We have another customer that we've started to spin up teams in places like Canada, places like Germany, places like the UK. So it's something that scales not only at a level within the company from one location. It scales at a very, it supports lots of users at one location, but it also scales to many different locations globally. So let's go ahead and select the United States and the number type. So this is also a distinction within Teams that's important. You have user numbers, and they break it out into different numbers, but they're all conference bridges, call queue numbers, and auto attendants. Those are all categorized as service numbers. So these service numbers can handle multiple, like a larger volume of calls simultaneously, and they're going to be assigned to either auto attendants, call queues, or conference bridges. Users will only go to one user, and that's pretty self-explanatory. So let's go ahead and select users. And here, why I touched on locations, this is exactly where you're going to have your emergency locations, and you're going to be able to select where you'd like those numbers to go. You select your area code, you select your quantity, you click next, you fill out your order name first, and just so everyone gets an idea of how quick and easy it is, you submit your order, and within minutes these numbers are ready. So once these numbers are ready, that's when you're going to start to assign it to users, and you're going to make sure that those users' locations are set up to where they're able to, they're assigned to their location. So after these numbers are provisioned and they're assigned to the users, these users can immediately start making phone calls from their Teams, any device. So from their Teams on their computer, their Teams on their cell phone, their Teams on their desk phone. And as you can see, this is, so once I place this order, it's going to show back to the phone numbers tab, and I'll be able to assign those numbers as soon as they arrive. So one of the things that people obviously looking for a phone system is to be able to handle their calls in a call queue or handle their calls in auto attendant, and Teams does that just like any other system. So I'll show you what a call queue will look like. So if I add a new call queue, I'm going to give it a name. A resource account. So the way a resource account works is that Teams will have you build out a user account. For different functions, you're going to have to add certain licenses, and it's also the account that you would assign the phone number to. So it's really just an administrative tool you assign to the call queue, and that way the call queue can be licensed and be assigned a number. So once you do that, you select your language. You can select a greeting that'll play right before that call is presented to the agents. And the text-to-speech in the auto attendance is actually fairly good. Here you have the option to insert an audio file. Then you have the option to also have default music, or you can play an audio file of your own once you upload it. For call answering, you have the option to add users in one by one individually, or you can add groups. So you can add distribution groups or Office 365 groups. If you already have a preset group of users that you know are going to take these calls, that's an easy way to add them into the call queue. It's also an easy way to not have to worry about changing the call queue. If you change the group, then the agents change. So that's a very nice feature of these. So the routing methods that you have your attendant routing, which essentially means all agents get called at the same time. You have serial routing, which calls from the top down every time. Round robin is going to call agent 1, the next one will call agent 2, and so forth. Longest idle just means that the last person to not receive a call gets the call. So, and one of the things that we've used right below that is called presence-based routing. It's really awesome. It's based basically upon the agent's status. So in the Teams video, you may have seen the status indicator. You can set yourself to available. If you're in a meeting, it's going to show that. If you're out of office, it's going to show that as well. And this presence-based routing leverages that to allow agents to receive calls in a call queue. And then you have your overflow and your call timeout handling. So from here, I can select what happens when either we have X amount of calls in the queue, or we have a certain amount of time that goes by before we want that call to be answered. So you have 4 different options. You have the person in your organization, so that's going to go directly to them. Transfer it as a phone call, it'll start ringing that next person. You have a voice app. A voice app means a call queue or an auto attendant, and it's going to send to one or whatever one you specify. An external phone number. Now, what I talked about with those resource accounts, you have to license it properly with a calling plan, but you can send the call to an external phone number from a call queue if it times out or if you have too many calls in the queue. And the last one is voicemail. So you're going to have a voicemail box that's going to send to an Office 365 group. These users are going to receive an email with that voicemail attached, and they're going to be able to all receive that, all see it, and be able to listen to it, see the transcription, all of those things. So that's kind of how you go through a call queue, build it out, and get it ready for production. So an auto attendant is going to have all the functions that you would see in a call queue in terms of how you're going to route those calls. You have the person, voicemail, a voice app, so like a call queue or an auto attendant, and then an external phone number. So if I go ahead and create this, the first thing you're going to see is an operator, and the operator is just going to be an option that you can pre-configure so that in the numbers section where you can set 1 to go to this, 2 to go to that, you can auto select operator. You're going to make sure to want to set your time zone in the right time zone so that your business hours operate correctly. And then you have your language and voice input. So voice inputs, Teams auto attendants allow you to do dial by name, or sorry, not dial by name, allow you to say the name of the user and have those users be reachable. And I'll show you in a little bit, there's a thing called dial scope where you can actually exclude different users, people that you don't want to be reached that way. You can make sure to exclude them. So let's go ahead and give this a name, test, and we're on the international date line. So we'll go ahead and go to the call flow. The call flow is just start hours. Again, you have the option of adding an audio file for a greeting, and here in the auto attendants, you can actually type out a greeting and have it do a text-to-speech for you. Then you have the option to route the call. You have the option first to redirect, kind of like we talked about in the call queues. You have your 4 options. You can go ahead and just send it without anything else happening. You also have the option to play menu options. So you can set up another greeting that will lay those out for the inbound caller, and you can assign dial keys. So let's say if we want to go to 0 for the operator, and it's going to say the destination for that operator. So once we set all that up, then we're going to go to next, and that's going to go to the after hours. So the after hours is going to allow you to select your business hours. Obviously, anything outside of that is how it's going to action in this page. So you have, again, the option to play an audio file type of greeting, and then you have those 4 options we talked about again, as well as play some more menu options. And then you can also set up things, holiday routing, if you have specific greetings that you want to include for holidays. You have specific routing that you want to do for those days. You add your holidays, and then you apply the routing to all of those holidays. And like I talked about here, the dial scope just allows people to either be available to be found in the auto attendant, or if you want to restrict it to only a certain user group, you can do that as well. So those are the auto attendants and call queues, your most basic and most leveraged call routing functions in Teams. Now, the cool thing about Teams as well is that you have actually some really great options on your own side to be able to handle the calls that come into your line directly. So you can forward your calls, you can ring also your calls, and then you can also just send them straight to voicemail if you need to. You can adjust the ring time. All of those things are options within your own Teams. So once you receive the call, you can action it how you want. So I think there's also a lot of analytics and reporting. So I have usage reports that will show me all of the calls that have been made in my tenant, and it's going to allow me to select a date range. So within the last 7 days, that's going to give me a really good idea of the amount of calls that have been made. It's going to allow me to track down any calls and see if I need to look at inbound numbers. And then I can go into the call quality dashboard and use that to actually dig into those calls. That's a little outside the scope of what we are probably looking at today, but that is something that can really be helpful if you are experiencing a lot of call quality issues. So now that we've kind of gone through the routing and the reporting, there are a few policies that I think are something you can take advantage of if you're looking to leverage Teams voice. So call parking, which is call parking is a feature that allows you to send a call to a hold and allow anyone else to pick it up. Once you send it there, it's going to send you a code. You'll use that. The end user will use that code to pick up that call. And again, you can use Teams, or you can use a group chat to be able to blast that code out and let anyone else pick up that call. So the call parking policies will allow you to enable that across a tenant. It'll allow you to to set the range for the code. So call parking is something that we actually leverage with one of our customers who used to have an overhead paging system, and they actually still do have that overhead paging system, but they use it through Teams. They use that system, and then they will say which call parking ID it's on, and the other person or one of the service agents will end up picking up that phone call. So the call parking policies and the caller ID policies, that's probably one of the biggest things we get questions about, is how to make sure that we have certain numbers masked. So I want to make sure that all my calls outbound are going to be masked by my main number. Well, this is where you're going to set it in the caller ID policy. And when you have different locations, this is important when you have different numbers that you want different people to be masked with. Your caller ID policies are going to be really important to make sure that's organized and you make sure who that's applied to. Now, if I want to show you the user policies and how we can make sure that that's done correctly. So if I go to my users and I go ahead and type in my name, I can see that all of my policies are set to global right now, but I'm able to go ahead and select through all of my policies which policy I want to assign. So you create the policies within the policy subsection, and then you go to the actual users and are able to assign the policies from those available. So there's a lot of things in Teams that are available, and they have a ton of they have a lot to offer in terms of whatever exactly you're looking to do. They provide a really robust and agile set of softwares that will run on a variety of devices that really allow you to be anywhere, be connected, and be able to reach anyone that you need to. So with that, I'd like to see if we have any questions that have been submitted.
We don't have any questions right now. If you do have any questions, please feel free to send them on. We'll give you a couple minutes. If not, let it know. You can always contact us with any questions you have. We'd love to discuss it more, but we'll give everybody a couple minutes, see if we have any questions.
And one thing I also wanted to point out is how cool these backgrounds are. So these were custom made, obviously, and are something that you can start to leverage in your Teams meetings. With everyone working from home, it's something that, you know, people just need to be able to concentrate, and there's a lot of stuff maybe going on in the background. You got dogs and kids and spouses that are just making a lot of noise. And so what you can do is create these backgrounds and apply those so that anyone is just going to see you. And I think not only in these moments where you're trying to really have a professional presentation for a webinar, but also just to make sure that anyone who's in a meeting and can see all the craziness that's going on behind you, to be able to blur that out or to be able to add a silly background, I think it provides really good work from home help. And I think that's one of the things that we found in Teams to be so helpful.
And Stephen, we did get a question. The question is it possible to have it set up in hybrid mode with an existing system?
Yes, so there is a list of supported SBCs, session border controllers. Those would handle your on-premise connectivity and allows Teams to be your PBX and do all of your call routing. So yes, that is possible. It's has to be supported devices, but yes, it is possible to do a hybrid routing. And in that case, you would use voice routing policies to handle that. So yes, it is possible.
All right, it doesn't look like we have any other questions right now. But once again, please feel free to contact us if you have any questions or if you think of anything. We'll be more than happy to help discuss how Teams Voice can help impact your business. And we'd just like to thank everybody for joining us today.
Thanks.